Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Listen, I know Dr. Steve's going to be joining us in a second, but before we jump in, I just want to get something off my chest. Can I do that?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So you remember how in last week's podcast, I told the story about Brian and the dress being tucked in?
Yes.
Yes. Who could forget that? I know. And he didn't check my butt or anything.
Right.
I have a confession to make.
What's your confession?
The podcast that dropped this week. Remember how I was joking around because you guys, Jennie always loves to give us a good burp before we start.
I do.
And do you remember how I burped at the end of the CTAs as a joke?
Yes.
Well, I listened to the whole podcast before it aired just for text things. And Brian goes, only thing left is CTAs. You can go run off. And I did. And I thought, why do I have to listen to the call to actions, right?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I just found out from you, Jennie. He left the burp in.
I heard it. It's amazing.
I thought it was so cute.
It's so funny.
But do you think that was a revenge burp? As I told the story about the dress. I mean, wouldn't he normally be like, oh, I have this cute idea. I'm going to leave your burp in. By the way, Jennie, how many times have you burped and it has never made it into the podcast?
I mean, I would be happy for my burps to make it in, but your burp was at least dainty and cute, whereas mine are disgusting.
No, but I mean, literally, I think this was okay, you told the story. It's true. But guess what? Now everyone's going to know that you burped into the mic.
I'm going to defend Brian. I don't think it was a revenge burp. I don't think so.
I don't know. But Mom, if you're listening, I did not know that I was burping and it was going to air.
Oh. I think that it was very cute. And it just shows that you are way more ladylike than me. Because even your burp is cute. And mine are disgusting. And Molly's are disgusting.
Right.
So we are mad if we don't have big giant burps.
Okay, then girls, give me a burp right now. Give me a good burp right now.
All right, hang on.
I can't do it on demand.
Molly's like,
I can.
I am not a circus act. Okay, no. When it comes to burping.
Wait, that was weak.
Oh, that was weak.
That's really
that was
weak.
so weak.
Terrible. Oh, apparently,
That's
Jennie,
you have to get the unplanned ones. Those are much better.
Yeah.
There we go. That was a good one.
Okay. That was okay.
Oh, wow. And let me try it again.
Oh, gosh. We're going to be here all day.
No, you've done much better. You've done much better ones.
That's like the ABC burping, like when you were a kid, how you can teach yourself to burp. My kids can burp now, and they're really proud of themselves. So, yeah.
It is a learning curve of how to burp.
Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend, taboos. Icky's what we do, it's just science. Yeah, it's not so weird. Your gross out journey starts right here on Oh, gross.
Well, welcome to Oh Gross. We tackle topics most people shy away from, like parasites in your sushi.
I'm Kara Kurtz. I'm your host, and I happen to be a crime journalist and investigative producer.
And I'm Jennie, your co-host and scientist specializing in biology, alongside my bestie, Molly.
It's Molly.
Now we're bringing in the experts, so you'll never have to say again, I'm just asking for a friend.
Oh, gross.
Today, we're really excited because Dr. Steve is coming back. He's our resident, I want to call him our panic doctor, but he obviously...
He's your panic doctor, but now he's our panic doctor.
He is the master of holding all knowledge when it comes to weird, rare diseases, bacteria. Could I get this? Do I have this? If it's bizarre, he knows.
He does.
He does know. And he's coming to join us once again. We're super excited. Just for, if there's any new listeners who might not remember, he is an infectious disease expert out of Memphis. He studied at Rhodes College. He is trained at Harvard. He is when it comes to these things, I don't think I'm shocked every time he tells us a new story because he knows everything. And touch on these bizarre bacterias, diseases, viruses. What is it, Jennie? I don't know.
Everything.
Ladies, we've been seeing a lot of crazy articles in the news, haven't we?
A lot of weird things.
Exciting, but crazy.
August was, I know we're in September now, but August was a very diseasey month.
Very weird. Yes.
It was a bacteria-filled, disease-filled, strange month for health and all things that go along in that vein.
Yes, there just seems to be a lot of
things that get in your veins.
Exactly.
And eat your veins.
So without further ado, we will bring Dr. Steve on to talk about all things oh gross that we saw in the news in August.
Yay.
Well, welcome, Dr. Steve.
Welcome again.
Welcome.
We're so
guys.
excited to
So
have you
good
back.
to see you.
Great to be back with you. I appreciate it.
We're so happy to see you. We're really hoping that you can, as usual, ease our fears.
Kara's fears.
Kara's text.
Can't always do that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jennie and Molly, especially Jennie. You were a little scared on some of these texts I sent you recently, correct?
I was scared, but really a little excited because, that kind of stuff excites me a little bit.
It excites you until you get some sort of crazy illness from it, right?
Right. Then I think I have it.
Then you think you have it.
Yeah.
So, as always, these conversations and a lot of these episodes stem from me texting Dr. Steve. Well, first texting the girls a panic article I found, and then me texting Dr. Steve any hour. Can we talk about this? Is this real? Interestingly enough, August was a very busy month for a lot of these stories. And I want to start with one story, Dr. Steve, that kind of kicked this all off for us. And we're going to talk about a couple of things today. But the one story had to do with a flea. And I think that scared us all a little bit more because we all know what fleas are and dogs carry fleas.
And we
whatever.
have animals.
And we have animals.
Mm-hmm.
And this flea story started out as a local story in Los Angeles about, I will let you explain, Dr. Steve, what this flea might carry. And then it started getting more national traction. But why don't you just hop in and take it from the moment I texted you in the middle of the night.
Hardly in the middle of the night. But, so these fleas carry an infection called typhus. And typhus, it turns out, is not just one thing. It's several things. And I'm very happy to report to you that the one that's going around central LA and the area is probably the least severe of the different forms of typhus. Typhus is a huge disease in history. Some of the other forms of typhus, epidemic typhus, it really caused the disaster of the Napoleonic Army in 1812. These things have changed the course of history in large outbreaks of things like typhus. The type of typhus that's going on in LA right now is something called murine typhus, and it's the flea-borne typhus. And it's really a pest problem. It's carried around by fleas that are attached to cats, rats, opossums that might live under somebody's house or crawl space. And so those animals will pass those fleas along potentially to humans. Humans don't pass it among each other, but if that flea bites you, you can get this disease. And the disease itself, this particular type of typhus, is generally a milder illness, though tell that to the poor soul that gets fever and headache and feels awful. Sometimes a rash, that's a little more common in kids than adults. It's easily treated with a common antibiotic called doxycycline, and frankly, even untreated people generally do fairly well, though occasionally people do get really sick and even die from it. Thankfully, that's rare. But it's really inconvenient, if not always dangerous.
So going backwards for a second, just so I understand it, when you say there's many forms of it, let's go back to the Napoleon days. What form was that, and how did people get that one? And what's the difference?
Yeah, so they're actually different germs altogether. They're different bacteria, all in the so-called Rickettsia class. It's a big class of bacteria. It includes Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Ehrlichia, other kind of more common things even than typhus. So you don't hear about typhus that often, but the epidemic typhus is one that's a little bit different. It's a more severe infection and really can be fatal in a lot more cases. Common in overcrowded sorts of situations. It's passed by the body louse, and so it's a louse-borne kind of infection.
Oh.
Jennie knows all about the body loss, and so does Molly.
Whoa.
But interestingly, it also can be passed in rare cases with flying squirrels. Can be a source of those too in the eastern United States.
For people who don't know, the squirrels actually fly.
Yes, they glide very effectively. It's kind of like the Buzz Lightyear thing. It's not flying; it's just falling with style, actually. But it's a much more severe illness than a lot of people. You see it in overcrowded situations. You've seen prison outbreaks in the past. I mentioned armies. It can go through and infect a lot of people very quickly. It can be a much more severe illness than can, thankfully, the type that currently is going on in LA.
In LA, it's different.
That's amazing.
Going back to this flying squirrel, just for people who don't know that it glides, where can we find our flying squirrels? What part of the country?
I think they're more in the eastern U.S., at least the particular type that's been associated with this. Though it may be more than that. And we certainly have a lot where I live in the Mid-South. But this is not a common issue. It's not like you need to be afraid if you see a flying squirrel running around. It's an uncommon sort of situation. And thankfully, epidemic typhus is really rare in the United States as well. It tends to be just overcrowded kinds of situations. Epidemic typhus, for example, was probably felt to be the cause of death of Anne Frank in a concentration
Oh,
camp
really?
in the 1940s. So these were common diseases that were spread by the louse in overcrowded situations and remain that even to today. Not something that the average American is going to
come
deal
across.
with or see very often.
This
But I
makes
still
sense.
need I still need to know about flying squirrels. Girls, have you seen a flying squirrel in
Oh,
your
yeah.
region?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have flying
have 'em
squirrels.
here.
They're very common, and I just want to say that this makes utter sense because the body louse is the only louse known to carry or be able to spread blood-borne pathogens. So head lice
Oh, yeah.
don't, and pubic lice don't, but body lice do, and they are common more so in a crowded and dirty area. So that makes sense, and I think that this is one of the most exciting talks I've ever had.
Yeah, nobody's excited about the body louse except for Jennie.
I know,
I
except for
don't
me.
even think Molly's face is saying excited right now.
Right.
So going back to LA and this type of flea, could this happen in other parts of the country? Is it because of the region or is it just because LA is a big city and
Oh, sure. It just probably is an outbreak right now that once it sets up in that population, it can certainly be in other places, and sometimes is. And so you've got a very large metropolitan area with construction going on, areas where some of these animals, possums, rats, I hate to tell you, they're all around you in urban areas. And so they can populate. The key is to keep them out of your neighborhood and everybody move it to the other guy's neighborhood. It's,
what about
the flea collars, making sure your pets don't go out and mingle with all the animals in the neighborhood.
Right.
That's kind of keeping them inside when you can, having the flea collars, using insect
collar.
repellents that are appropriate and effective. So all those things. It's a pest problem.
So a flea collar will help protect your animal if you were concerned and you lived, let's say, in downtown or central LA and you're in an area.
Though it's
where you walk
important to
your
point
dog.
out that animals don't usually get sick from it. So your cat won't get sick if you don't have a flea collar. That's the thing, probably, but they
you
might
might.
share a flea with you, and then you get sick from it. So
That makes sense.
that's
What
it.
about like a dead animal? There was a dead squirrel when my daughter was leaving for a field trip and we were in a park. And of course, the boys are like, ooh, what is this? Right. And so every parent is panicking, like, don't touch the dead squirrel. Get away from the dead squirrel. Can dead animals also still carry these fleas?
Sure. I mean, fleas can be on dead animals, though they typically give up and jump on after a while. Not a great
Give up because they're vampiring and they're like, I
Right.
can't get nothing good.
Right.
not a great gluttony in a dead squirrel for just too long. But certainly in the beginning, yeah, anywhere there are fleas, they can then jump on you. And again, they can get in the just an overgrown yard or neighborhood can be helpful for some of those animals. The fleas get in the foliage, and so basically, as I say, it's kind of a cleanup problem and pest control problem is the
So it's more
bigger
of a
part of
pest
this
thing.
particular illness and outbreak.
And just for everybody who's listening and saw this article and a lot of people who are just paranoid in general who love this stuff, what would the signs be that you would have to say, hey, maybe I got bit by a flea that would have this? Like, what would you look for that's different than your normal rash or different than having a fever from something else?
Well, it's sort of the classic sort of triangle is fever and severe headache and the rash, though by no means does everybody get all three of those. Particularly the rash in adults is not everybody gets it. But, you feel pretty cruddy with these things sometimes, and sometimes it can be hard to know. But high fever and headache should get your attention no matter what it ends up being, because those can be much more significant things. So that should probably pose a call to your healthcare provider if you have high fever and headache. And rash can be a part of other very severe diseases. Think meningococcemia, things that can be very deadly. So that kind of triad should get somebody's attention. There's not a lot of Rocky Mountain spotted fever there. There's a lot where I am. And so, but anybody that has that sort of presentation should probably get their attention and prompt a call to their provider, I would think.
No matter what. And just say, hey, I have all three.
Right.
And of course, headache is common with fever. It's sort of part and parcel of it. But when you have a severe headache, the kind of headache that you
Right.
never had before, accompanied by significant fever, that can be a marker of meningitis, other things that can be, again, I don't want to over stress somebody who has fever and headache, but if it's really bad, that should prompt probably a call because that can be emblematic of something that can really take you over the falls pretty quickly if you're not careful.
I mean, another thing I think we keep seeing in the news, or that all three of us have seen before, but it seems to be more popular right now, is every once in a while you would see an article about somebody who ate like bad oysters, right? As they would call it. But it seems like, right, ladies, that's been popping up more too. We're just seeing more of these cases. And I don't know if it's because the Daily Mail looks for these cases and sort of these like sort of like our tabloids have become now, you might get this disease, but or is it more prevalent? Because that's another one we keep seeing popping in the news is like this.
Yeah. Again, not a common illness, but can be very severe. And so it's a germ called Vibrio. The classic version of that, particularly in the Gulf waters, is Vibrio vulnificus. But, ocean waters are a bit warmer in the last few years than they have been.
Let's break this out. Vibrio vulnicus.
Vibrio, V-I-B-R-I-O.
Vibrio.
Vulnificus, V-U-L-N-I-F-U-C-U-S.
Who like comes up? Who's like? It's like let's have the hardest thing to say 3 times.
It's we're going to come up with the other louse or the other typhus, Susu-Gamushi fever. We never got to that. That's really my favorite.
We didn't even get to talk about that yet. You told me that on the phone. Wait, tell the girls about this Susu-Gamushi.
Okay, that's just the third kind of major form of typhus that we see. It's called scrub typhus or Orentia Susu-Gamushi with 2 silent T's. Easily my favorite disease.
Whoa.
And it's a variable severity, can be more severe, kind of between the two. And it is a disease that can give you a sort of black eschar and associated with this rash or something called a tache noir. It tends to be more in other parts of the world than what we see here. It's not as common where we are now in other parts of the country. You get more toward the Asian continent where you see that. But it can be a pretty severe disease. And it's passed by a chigger. So all of these guys.
The chiggers. It's always the chiggers. Chiggers scare me.
They scare me too.
All these guys have vectors. Vector we think of as gross, but you see a lot. I mean, vector-borne diseases have always been one of the real problems of mankind. I was about to say the plague of mankind because plague itself is a vector-borne disease.
Well, can you explain for people who don't know what vector means, what it is?
Yeah. So a vector-borne disease is simply a disease that is carried from someone else to you. We generally think of it as being like an animal, but not always. And those diseases are carried by things like anything from mosquitoes to fleas to mites to chiggers, all the things that we're talking about. I mean, you figure malaria is just that, and that's one of the biggest killers of all time known to man. Kills hundreds of thousands of people. So any of these diseases we've talked about, so far, the chiggers, the fleas, those are just the vectors. Those are the things that carry the disease to you from something else. And so many diseases are like that. I mean, some of the things that used to be a little south of the United States with warmer weather, we see them inching up a little bit. Things like dengue.
And Amazon boxes.
Hmm?
And Amazon boxes, my theory.
Yeah. Could be part of the problem. I don't know, but but those things are a little more common in Texas and California and Arizona. Things like dengue fever, which usually you didn't see much in the United States, and they live. The mosquitoes that carry those, the Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, live in cities. They like humans.
We have warnings now. We never had mosquitoes like 10 years ago, and we have warnings like now in certain places for that. Yeah.
And those guys
Mosquitoes
can
are
carry
awful.
things. And so,
So
these vector-borne diseases are some things that you see all the time, and you think about it, you just probably don't think of it in those terms very often.
So, Jennie, can you explain for everybody, because I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Okay.
Can you describe what a chigger is?
I don't even know what a chigger is. I
I
just
think
know
nobody
that they
does,
bite
right?
us.
Isn't it a sand flea?
Ooh.
I think when you go to the beach sometimes and you get bit on your ankles and things
But
like
they're
that,
out in the
aren't
woods
those
too,
chiggers?
aren't they? In the woods and stuff too.
I just know I'm afraid of them.
It's actually a mite, so it's a very
It's a
tiny,
mite.
crawly guy. And nothing itches like a chigger bite. And
Yes,
they make
they do
burrows
itch.
into your
Mhm.
superficial skin, and it's you can actually help by covering up the little burrow that some of them live in there in your skin for a short
Oh.
time. So
God.
they are
Wait.
bad. They are bad itch guys. No question about that.
Are they in Florida?
Sure. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
they're
'cause
they're
I feel-
everywhere,
I
aren't
feel
they?
like
I
they're
feel
at
like
beaches.
I feel like you're right, Molly, because I feel like I remember being a kid and being in Florida and like having like the inkle, like, and they're like, oh, there's chiggers out.
Rolling
Right,
around in the
yeah.
grass is a really great way
Yeah, I
to
was
get
gonna
chiggers.
say
Yeah.
they're in the
Yeah.
grass
And
too.
they will just, it's brutal.
There's a lot of them in Georgia.
So they're a mite. That's interesting. I did not know that they were a mite. I always like, it's so funny. I know I'm afraid of chiggers, but that doesn't say much. It's like, I didn't know what,
Add it to the list.
add it to the list, but I did not know that they were a mite. So that they live in the grass. And if chiggers are popular in the United States, we all know have been exposed to them. How do we say it again? Your favorite name for a disease?
Sushi theoria.
Yeah,
Sushi gamushi?
Sushi Kamushi.
Sushi.
Susu gamushi. Yeah, with
Susu
yes,
gamushi.
yes,
gamushi.
We'll make a song.
silent
Susu gamushi.
Kamushi.
Well, that's really funny because it's not just the fact that the vector lives where you are. It's also the germ isn't necessarily supported by the behavior. Think Lyme disease, passed by the Ixodes tick. I've seen when I worked in Massachusetts, I'd see it until I was tired of it. But when I live south now, below the Mason-Dixon line, the tick behavior, the biology is different. So the ticks, instead of biting white-footed mice and deer and getting to people, they tend to bite salamanders below the leaf layer. So we crunch them under our feet. The behavior is such, and we don't always fully understand why that's the case. But it has to line up without just the stuff being here. It has to also deal with behaviors that allow the passage to humans. So sometimes it's very complicated.
So like what
beyond-
they're feeding on, or how they're
Exactly.
migrating, or
Yeah.
what they're.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
A
interesting.
lot of factors depending on the different diseases. Lyme disease is just a great one because there's just a line below which you really don't see very much. Right? I've seen probably 5 cases of Lyme disease that we diagnosed as having been transmitted here in 28 years. So it's very uncommon to actually happen here. I see it all the time as somebody who's been to Cape Cod for the summer.
Or the Midwest. I mean,
That's
the Midwest, and
so
Wisconsin,
interesting.
Well,
Illinois.
and in
right?
fact,
Yeah.
there's an Ixodes pacificus tick that gives you some cases out there in California as well.
I mean, I bet the genetics as in those areas as the ticks are mating, and then they have these same genetics, and so they probably learning behavior. They're attracted to what they're feeding on in those regions.
There's just a lot of complex biology behind it, and some of it obviously is regulated by the weather. Some of it is regulated by other issues. But every disease is different. It's very complicated.
so
There are people who
interesting.
spend their entire career studying a few of these particular diseases and the biology behind them that helps them behave that way.
But what I'm also hearing is like a big thing to reduce the panic, because Gross is about that too, right, ladies? And is that you need to know your region. So like if you live in certain regions where obviously deer are prevalent and you think you might have been bitten by a tick, obviously that's going to be on your radar. If you live in a shushu gamushi,
I love that name.
I know, it's so good. I had to slip it in somehow. Where chiggers might be, you need to know that. And some of these things, it's not that they don't pertain at all. There could always be outliers, but in certain regions they're not as popular. So don't panic every time you see an article. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, and furthermore, it changes the behavior of the clinician. If I'm in Massachusetts or upstate New York and somebody has had a known Ixodes tick bite and they're in a really high incidence area of Lyme, there's some people that advocate giving a single dose of doxycycline to prevent Lyme
Just in
disease in
case,
those
just in
situations.
case,
That would be
yeah.
crazy to do where I live because the
Right.
side effect of even a single dose of antibiotic would be way higher risk than the risk of getting that disease in the first place, which is completely treatable if you do get it.
All right.
Now we got to go back to the oysters. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So why are we seeing it in the news more? And what do you get from them? What is it? Because I used to hear when I was a kid, I remember you'd always hear a story like, oh, they ate bad oysters. Like they had been left out or they weren't handled in the right way in the temperature or something. And there was like this assumption that it's almost like eating spoiled meat. But what is really going on with the oyster that causes
Well,
this?
they can taste kind of bad when they're left out in the sun for a long time. But in terms of the diseases, probably one of the more important ones is this disease that you can get from the warm ocean waters.
Oh. So it is tied
and-
with warm. It's not a total wives' tale. There's a little bit of a warm idea. It's warm water, though. It's coming
Sure,
from.
warm salt water at that.
Right.
So Vibrio vulnificus is kind of the most common one that we talk about. There's several Vibrios, just like there's several kinds of typhus. But Vibrio vulnificus is one that lives classically in the Gulf, but with warmer waters. Heck, I saw one 30 years ago in Massachusetts. And there are actually a lot of beach closures now up in New England, the East Coast, the Carolinas, and even in California. So we're seeing that germ with a little bit higher, and bacteria in general. There's been sort of a bloom of bacteria lately.
Yes.
And with
Yes,
the-
a lot of
nobody
beach
was-
closures.
Yeah, nobody understands completely why, whether there's some wash off from the rain with sewage, mixing in the stuff with some E. coli issues that people have talked about too. But for whatever reason, there's a higher concentration of that. And raw oysters can sometimes concentrate this germ Vibrio. And for the normal person, it's not a terribly high risk, but particularly with people with underlying liver disease, if you have cirrhosis, if you have other kinds of liver disease, it can be a real problem. So
Oh,
it can be
no.
a very overwhelming, rapidly progressive illness that can result in death, particularly people with liver disease. And the other thing it does is if you're wading in warm ocean waters, and again, it's salt water, not so much a lake water phenomenon, and you have a little cut, even a very small one, that germ can get in there and really make you have an awful looking cellulitis, swollen red leg with large blisters that have blood in them. It's a very impressive illness when it occurs. And it's not necessarily treated by some of the most common antibiotics. So you've got to suspect that. You mentioned it's important to know what region you're in. It's very important. I mean, if I have someone who comes to me sick and they've just been to, California, San Joaquin Valley, I have a different group of things that I'm worried about than if they just came from the East Coast. And so it's very important in those kind of things to suspect things and to talk about where they've been, what they've
Where
been
they've
exposed.
been. I was gonna say a lot of times we go to the doctor and they'll be like, "Have you traveled?" And you roll your eyes because you're like, "Oh, you think I?" And people think, I know a lot of people think it's because, "Oh, you think I've brought back some bizarre bug from another country," but what really is trying to narrow down what you've been exposed to.
Right.
A good clinician, and you should think about that. A very good clinician is going to ask you if you're sick, where have you been? What have you
Right.
done?
They
What
do,
pets
yes.
do you have? Do you have a pet, iguana? Because those people get salmonella. They carry salmonella. So the things about that are very much related to exposures. And a good clinician should ask you that question because it can make a big difference. You have to suspect some things to think about it because you might not give an antibiotic that would treat plague unless you had been in the Four Corners area and been hanging out with prairie dogs. And that sounds funny, but it does rarely happen. And so you have to take good history.
No, we
It's
had
not-
a plague thing here in LA that was in the news from like rats or something, right? Is that correct? Like the people were all
Yeah, it's
panicking.
typically prairie dogs and sort of high altitude rodents are the ones that you typically see it in. But once again, it's a vector-borne disease with fleas that can jump over to you from that. It's possible to get it from direct contact from a sick animal, but that's much less likely. But it's all about not just what your symptoms are, but what you've been exposed to, because different things can look similar just superficially, but that's why you have to ask questions like that, and your clinician should every time you see them if you're sick.
And also, I think the ocean thing, to go back to it, like I remember as a kid, like everyone thought like salt water like heals, right? Like, so if you've got a cut and you go in the ocean, it's supposed to be good for you. Was that a wives' tale, or is that like?
Guess it depends on what's floating around in that water right
But
then.
I'm just
'cause-
wondering, was that ever true? And then if there was no bacteria in there, or is that like just something that we all told each
Well,
other? 'Cause it's all...
there are probably fewer bacteria per se than in a farm pond. I'll grant that. There are different germs that you can get in fresh water.
Right.
Aeromonas, I got a list of them. But saltwater is okay right up until the time you bump into Vibrio that gets into your cut. And so it's probably, it can be a problem. It really can.
So stay away from the ocean if you got a cut.
Well, that
Well, I'm
also
not
makes
big on
me
having
think.
people wade in any kind of natural water
Yeah.
if they have an open cut. It can be a problem for sure.
So if there's warnings out there,
Yeah.
what I think now, if there are warnings and they're closing beaches, people should really pay attention to it and not just assume that they're going to be okay, because that's actually a valid warning for someone's safety and health.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, there are real things that they don't just close beaches. I mean, we go back to the movie Jaws. They don't like to close beaches. It hurts
Right.
tourism. It's
Right.
not a popular thing to do. Now, ocean swimming is not my favorite thing. I enjoy being at the top of the food chain and all. But
You're right.
if you have a cut or if you have immune suppression, you have to be more careful about, in a lot of ways, about the environments that you're in. I'm not against swimming in the ocean, for heaven's sake.
Right,
but-
right, yeah.
but there are things that you can have and have underlying problems. And those are the kind of things very important to talk to your healthcare provider about. If you have certain chronic diseases or illnesses, you should talk to them about what can I do? What can I not do? What's not a good idea for me? And that may be very different for the four of us here about what to do.
And
for
water
recreation.
shoes, even. I know, like, there's all different topography when it comes to an ocean, right? The Jimmy Buffett moment, if you step on a bottle top, right?
Right.
And cut your, not just your flip flop. but,
Yeah, no, exactly right. Water shoes are great. They prevent those cuts that we're talking about. So
yeah,
those
like things
great
like
idea.
simple water shoe. But going
Yeah.
back to the oysters, is there anything for our listeners to know that, like, if you're a big oyster lover, right, what to beware of? Because, I mean, I think that one article, well, we saw the article a couple of months ago about the couple that woke up and one was like paralyzed and ended up dying. And the other one was like, I was in a coma all she remembers is eating oysters, or the husband only
Yeah.
remembers oysters. But like, we are seeing more articles. What can we know to sort of not panic, but understand?
Yeah. As less than a huge raw oyster consumer, I'm not the greatest connoisseur of that, but I'll tell you that a lot of people will say that it's careful where you source your oysters, because there are people that are more or less careful. So a high-end place that serves those probably have typical and fairly stable sources of their oysters, and they're kind of familiar with that. So that can be important. You can't necessarily look at an oyster and tell that it has Vibrio in it. So, but
There's
if you
no way to
can-
look. I mean,
Right.
could Jennie look under the microscope and know?
No, wish we could. That's probably a big thing, is to make sure you're familiar with the source of them, because there are some areas that are tended than others. But yeah, the important thing is if you get sick, be sure that's one of the things you should tell your clinician is if you.
I
if
ate
you-
oysters.
And there are other things now from sushi and other things that we kind of have talked about and can
Yeah.
learn about more.
You've ruined sushi for us, Dr. Steve.
People may get mad when I talk about the problems with raw oysters, because a lot of my physician buddies love them, and that's great.
I know a lot of people love them.
This is why I don't eat oysters. I don't eat them.
I have
Same.
done it like twice in my life, maybe 3 times. But I have a dumb question. I love my dumb questions. What if you put is there anything you can put on it? Like if you put horseradish on your oyster, is it going to kill the bacteria? If you put Tabasco
No, I
has
think
vinegar in
anything-
it, or vinegar, so
Anything
vinegar?
short of battery acid, I don't think it's going to really work.
Right. Exactly.
Well, girls, did you read the article I sent you on the valley fever?
Yes.
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 So that's like another thing. Like I mean, I don't know what you thought of it right away, but you guys can jump in. But I mean, we'll have Dr. Steve explain it. But that was that one. I'm like, now we have something else.
I just
I mean,
keep
it made me,
thinking, why
it made
is
me glad that I don't
everything-
live by the desert.
I know.
I
Why
mean,
is
that's like a
everything
desert
there?
thing.
On that side of the U.S. right now,
Right.
it feels like there's so much going on.
Well, you got like amoebas and stuff that go up your nose by you and
We
Lynx.
do-
don't
we
you?
do.
Yeah.
We have all these,
We have
like-
that here.
yeah. It seemed like the incidence of it is growing, of this valley fever.
Yeah.
So, again, not a new organism, not a new infection. For longer than I have anyway, a long time. And it's one of what we call the endemic fungi, or endemic fungal infections. So they are geographically distributed, like we talked about. Blastomyces.
Is that the same as ringworm? Because it's like a fungi.
Oh, no. We'd way rather have ringworm than this. That we pull stuff on that, it goes away.
Look at Molly's face.
No, I've had ringworm. That's why I'm like, really?
Molly, we've all had ringworm.
So this is like coming from dirt, right?
But fungi,
in
remember, they're interesting. Yeah, it is. And remember,
in
fungi
dirt.
in general are huge, its own kingdom. There's bacteria,
Yeah.
there's animals, and fungi are closer to us than to bacteria.
Right.
They're
Really?
multi-cellular organisms. Oh, yeah, they're complicated organisms. And so some of them are very geographically distributed. Coccidiomycosis, the causative agent of valley fever and its complications, more in the San Joaquin Valley, though it seems to be expanding
you
a
keep
bit.
talking about that San Joaquin Valley.
Yes.
Histoplasma, blastomyces, more where I am. And so, but coccidiomycosis, I never see it as a primary problem. I saw it in a.
All right, now you got to break it down for people really slowly. What is the name of it, and explain the two different ones.
Sure, it's called coccidiomycosis.
Okay.
And it's coccidioides is the name of the germ. And
I'm like 6 years old right now.
coccidioicosis
Coccidioides.
is the name of the infection that it causes. So there are a lot of great names. These name guys have to like keep their jobs and keep changing them. And
That's close to a parasite name, Coccidia.
it is. No, it is.
Yeah.
That's right. Coccidioides.
Coccidioides.
Oides.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, it can look a little like that. There are a lot of names like that, oid, when they name them. It's a yeast that lives in the dirt. Much as histoplasma and blastomyces, other kinds of endemic fungi, limited to others, lives in the dirt of the soil. And so anything like a construction site or
Okay.
sometimes dust storms and things can churn
And
that
there's been a
up.
lot of dust storms in Arizona
Yeah.
and other places. Yep.
Yeah. And so you can breathe those in, and the spores, which they make little seed-like things, they dry themselves out so they can survive in those conditions. You breathe them in and they germinate just like a seed would into a plant. And these guys will germinate into the full yeast form, and then they'll cause infection. And valley fever by itself is not a typically severe illness. It is maybe flu-like illness, maybe fever, maybe headache, maybe a cough, like a community pneumonia kind of thing, and frequently it'll go away all by itself without any therapy. Though a certain percentage, anywhere from 1 to 10%, depending on who you are, it can lead to chronic lung troubles with cavities in the lungs, or even worse, dissemination like meningitis in typically people who are diabetic, advanced age, pregnant, immunosuppressed. Those
Like
people
half
can
the
have.
population.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So do they have to treat you with an antifungal if you have
They
that?
can,
Is it
and usually the milder valley fever form, it doesn't even require that.
okay?
So the valley fever could be in California, it could be in Arizona, correct?
Yeah. No, it's spreading out a little bit in its areas, though not dramatically. You wouldn't see it where I am in
Right.
Tennessee, but you certainly could see it anywhere kind of in the desert Southwest area for sure. And
And you typically inhale it, or do you typically inhale it? Because you said
you
it.
do inhale it, yeah.
Yeah.
From
And
the
that's why
dirt.
things like construction and
But if
dust
I
storms.
touch it, I'm not going to get it. It's like I have to inhale
No,
it.
it's not really a touch sort of thing, and you
Okay.
can't really spread it from people to people. You have to breathe it in.
You have to
in your,
breathe it in.
Yeah, in the dust of the air, and that's where it kind of sets up shop in your lung. And usually, to Jane's question, doesn't require therapy if it's that mild valley fever form. But a certain percentage will get up to and including things like meningitis and bone infections. Those require therapy. Meningitis lifelong. You have to be on
Yeah,
suppressant antifungal
right.
therapy
Whoa.
forever. Though some of the common, more severe pneumonia forms or cavities in the lungs,
Oh.
those can be treated anywhere from a few months to a year, and frequently do fairly well. But it's
If
something you
I've
have to
been
watch.
if I've been vaccinated for meningitis, am I protected against that?
No, not at all, because remember, meningitis is just a term that means inflammation of the linings of the brain. It
It's
doesn't. It's like bank robbery. It doesn't tell you whether you're Al Capone or Pretty Boy Floyd. All those could be very different risks depending on what's causing it. It just tells you what the syndrome is. A lot of different things cause meningitis. Viral meningitis hurts like the world, but it doesn't kill you almost ever.
Right.
Whereas bacterial
Bacterial.
meningitis, pneumococcal, that can be very, very dangerous. So
Right.
the same thing is true. This type of meningitis is very bad. It's difficult to treat. It's unusual form, and again, will sometimes take lifelong medication. You don't find that even in severe meningitis cases in bacteria. You can treat them, and some of them die, but if they don't, they usually resolve and get well and do okay.
Okay, so again, for anyone listening and afraid now that they have valley fever or that they're worried about it, what is the difference between like I have bronchitis because everyone seems to be coughing, right? And that I might have valley fever.
And sometimes it can be hard to tell.
Okay.
And as long as it goes away and you're doing all right, there may not be a whole lot of difference or worry because, as I say, you don't even necessarily need antifungal. If you're worried it's persisting or causing problems, you can do a blood test to look for antibodies to coccidioides.
Okay,
that
you can
help
do a
make
blood
the
test.
diagnosis,
Okay.
whereas those would not be positive in the average other kinds of viral or even some of the bacterial bronchitis out there.
And if you have a mild form of valley fever that happens to linger, because I read some that it does linger, right? You could just be like when you have bronchitis for 3 months, it feels like we've all had that like 3-month cough that one year. Is it like that if you don't have a fever or anything? You just
It
sort of
can, and furthermore, people with airways problems, asthma, they can have prolonged cough. Like when I got to be 40, I started having post-viral bronchitis. No matter what it is, I'll cough and wheeze for weeks sometimes afterwards.
too.
And that can be true of anything, even something
Yeah.
that could by itself cause a more severe infection. But you can have that tendency in even things when it's not in that worst form. So yes, it could linger, but if it's lingering, getting worse, you're coughing up blood or more stuff or persisting fevers, that's of course a different matter. You need to have some chest imaging and check a serology, and your healthcare provider can certainly do that.
So I'm gathering like valley fever's been around for a while where you're reading about it. Don't
Oh, yeah.
necessarily panic. Just
infectious
know
disease
again in the
doctors-
region that could be a cause for
Yeah.
XYZ.
And infectious disease doctors in your area in California are going to know all about this. Whereas if they present somewhere where I live, somebody's got to be scratching their head and thinking, and you have to ask them where they've traveled. So it becomes more important to get information, find out about the patient.
It's not really something you can protect yourself from. If a dust storm comes in, I mean, I guess if you wear a mask, but is there even a guarantee of like what kind of mask you would even need to protect yourself from particles like that?
Duck and hope for the best, I think. No, I mean, these
I love your honesty. Wait,
the masks, they are masks.
as I cough.
Yeah, N95 masks are really good protection. They're not
Right.
They're not very comfortable for cutting your grass, but masks and sometimes kind of be helpful in that situation. Though from a practical standpoint, it's not just the blinding dust storm that gives this. I mean,
Right.
histoplasma here, cocci there. You can get it from going to your car.
Coxy everywhere.
Yeah, cryptomycosis is you can get it from just walking outside of your car. You don't have to be out there at a construction site to get it, although that helps, no question.
Well, I know you don't have much. You have to go see a patient soon, but I have to tell the girls something. So the best part of this whole story, girls, and he's gonna lay it on us. I'm like panicking, and I talked to Dr. Sue about all these things that kind of been floating around, right? And we're on the phone, and at the end of the conversation, and Dave, our producer, was on too. He's like, but that's not really what excites me or worries me. He's like, none of this. He was like, let's talk about burrowing. So jump in. Tell the ladies what you told me gets you all excited to talk about that is a little more, I would say it's more worrisome, but more uncomfortably worrisome.
Sorry, remind me again. What was it?
The drilling when you were telling me about the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
He's got so many diseases. Like, which one? I got so many fun ones.
Yeah, it's just sort of whichever one would pull out whichever one.
Which disease?
I'll choose 12B. So there was a case that made some national news recently.
Recently, yeah.
And it was diagnosed in early August. And it was called it's called a screwworm infestation.
I saw that.
I saw this.
Yeah, so there's a fly called the blowfly, which currently is kind of Central America, but it's up into Mexico and it's getting north and north. And
what does it look like? Walk us through.
The actual disease. Yeah,
the blowfly. What does the fly
the
look
blowfly
like?
is a small black fly, and it will land on animals, typically could have cattle. It's really not at all common in humans, to be perfectly honest, which is a good thing. But it's common in cattle where they'll land on a small wound. They like those areas, and they'll lay a couple 300 eggs.
In your cut?
Yeah, on the cut. And then it will those little larvae will hatch and become little maggots. And same as other fly maggots or larvae. And they'll burrow down in here. The difference and the worst part about the screwworm is that if you look at other maggots, they can cause some human stuff. The botfly larva, I've seen a few of those. You have to pluck out, little roly-poly looking maggot. But these guys, unlike most maggots who really feed on necrotic or dead tissue, and we actually, you may recall that we sometimes even use them medically. They're kind of
right. I was going to say, don't use them. Yeah.
Generated maggots, and they go in and intricately, chew up necrotic tissue and clean things up that can even be a benefit. The screwworm is of no such politeness. It will go after perfectly live normal tissue and burrow down in those 200 of them all the way to a bone.
No. No.
Literally chew a big hole in you.
Hence the screw.
And so it's a real problem in livestock because they don't, they can't go, hey, I need to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And thankfully, most people, like the person that brought this from El Salvador on a trip on back to East Coast Maryland, I think it was. So they went to the doctor and apparently did fine. But you can cause bacterial infection and necrotic dead tissue, and it can lead to a big infection and boil and abscess. It can be very, very dangerous. And again, it's a big problem in cattle. Now, we had this here.
But did this guy in Maryland get it from cattle?
No, he got it from a fly that landed on him. Presumably. And I don't know a lot
normal
of the
skin.
particular. It probably was a little cut in the skin, maybe a small one, and it landed there and set up shop. Now, again, as a normal human, you'd go, gosh, this is a big, ugly red thing going in my arm I've looked at. And so they opened it up and debrided it and got all the maggots out and the larvae out, and it does fine when you do that. Watch out for bacterial infection that go along with it.
Yeah, don't try to debride your own anything.
No, or take out your own appendix or anything. None of that stuff is a good idea.
Go to the doctor.
Yeah, and this is one that probably won't have you guessing whether you should go to the doctor either.
Right.
But the problem is that it affects livestock and can be real damaging in that regard. And we had them here. These flies were here, and gosh, as recently as the 60s.
Oh, really?
And there was a big push. We made a factory and made a bunch of sterile male flies by radiating them so that they couldn't pass on their genetics, and dropped them out of a plane.
Yes.
And guess what? There were a bunch of not pregnant female flies, and so they went away, and we eradicated them about 1966. And so this is a problem.
So the U.S. did have them as a problem, and then we eradicated
and so the people
them.
in Texas area and livestock are very nervous about this. And so this was diagnosed, I think, about August the 6th. It really wasn't made public until kind of the end of August, 25th, I think it was. And somewhere, interestingly, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, there was an announcement made middle of August that we were going to create a new factory to create these sterile male blowflies again. And so they can be prepared for this and can probably ward it off before it really makes it up.
Wait a minute. We're going to slow down for a second. So what I'm hearing here little journalism going on here. We heard about one story in the news, but if they went and already started a factory to eradicate this again, there's more than one story. That's the one that got on the news.
So it's moved up into Mexico substantially.
Mexico,
I think there was
okay.
even
Okay,
a death of
But
a
I
Mexican.
think what we're hearing is that nobody gets a factory going unless there's already more cases.
Well, I am not an investigative reporter, so I don't. No, but I'll tell you this: it wouldn't
not
have
a
to
bad
be
thing,
more
I'm just saying.
cases. It wouldn't have to be more cases, but even one case brought to the U.S. may wake people up to think about it. And
Right.
we already know that it's coming up from this person who's gone to El Salvador, for example, where there is an outbreak and a problem right now. But if it's if it's climbing in latitude up into Mexico,
Right.
it's been here before, it can come back again. So I think probably those kind of things can kind of wake things up to go, maybe we better be prepared for this because it's we've done it before. It's not that complicated to ward it off. And so hats off to people for thinking about it and being on the front end of it because, as you say, the cattle industry in Texas is paying a lot of attention to this. They are in no way excited about this problem.
Yeah, I know that it's fascinating. I mean, it's just fascinating that like the story starts like August 6th, and then by like the announcement 25th about this, in between we've got a factory.
Well, you can check me on those dates. I think some people were asking about that question, and this happened partly while I was on vacation, so I was like, wow. But
Well, that's the
but
problem. August is popping up all these stories because everyone was on vacation getting
Yeah.
stuff.
yeah, well, there's that. Traveling around, getting
Traveling
stuff and
around,
bringing it home.
back all
see,
the
so-
things. Yeah.
The picture of the larvae looked like a little seal.
What?
Did you see it? Like I saw a picture of the
I
larvae
saw the
in an
picture. I think
article,
I have
and
it
it
here.
reminded me of like a tiny
see.
seal.
I'm gonna look at it right now. I have it.
Oh
right
yeah, a
here.
little walrus thing. Yeah,
Like a
it's,
walrus,
yeah.
like a walrus.
looks
Oh
like
yeah,
a-
it does
yeah.
look like a walrus.
He is kind of cute.
Like a little like walrus thing.
Yeah.
your taste is your own business, but
I don't know if it's cute, but
it's a larvae that's of substantial size, and it's got two little black teeth that come off, and
Yeah.
they can go
Razor
to work
sharp,
on
right?
good
Yeah.
tissue. Very, very sharp, yeah. And so it's a pest that it's important certainly in the livestock industry. You're not going to see a lot of human cases from this because people will go, what's that, and get it taken care of. But in somebody that can't do that, or somebody who's not paying attention, it's conceivable that, and again, it has caused some human deaths. It's just very rare.
well, it's always a pleasure, Dr. Steve. And as we wrap it up with my nightmares of burrowing anything. Before you leave, Dr. Steve, what we need from you is we need to know, because there's so many oh gross stories from you always. But what is this visit's oh gross moment you're going to share with us?
There's a story about armadillos that people think they're harmless,
They're
but in the sort of sort of. But in the lower latitudes, in the southern climates, we have a big problem with armadillos, and up to 20% of them can carry leprosy. And so-
Oh, that's a huge number.
What?
And so I had seen a delightful patient who recently presented with about 6 months of numbness over rashes on them. And I've seen this before in people from India who came and came for therapy here. But in a United States citizen, it's a little more uncommon. And so it causes numbness and a rash and can cause what we call neuropathy, where the nerves get kind of affected. And this person had no misbehavior other than picking up a dead armadillo that their dog had brought onto their porch of their cabin in kind of the rural southern U.S. And they cleaned it up, and the dog probably slobbered on them, and so about 4 years later they developed leprosy.
4 years?
Yeah, it can be years.
I have friends in Oklahoma who would like come across armadillos all the time. It took 4 years.
Don't touch them, hug them,
Whoa.
or in otherwise answer the door for them. That they a substantial proportion of them can carry leprosy, and so an exposure to armadillo is one of those kind of important things. And a very astute clinician had thought about that before they sent them to me for therapy. Therapy is very complicated with leprosy, but it's not the first case I've seen. But a lot of people don't realize that if you see a dead armadillo, leave it alone. A lot of them can carry leprosy, and they can pass along to you through their secretions. And if you're cleaning up after a dead armadillo, and it might happen to you for 5 to 10 years later.
That
before
long.
actually-
What? It's just. It just. What?
Very slow growing bacterium in some sort of in a lot of ways, and it likes cool portions. It doesn't like the inside of you as much. It likes the skin. It likes nerves. They tend to be cooler temperature than the rest of you. So it's a fascinating bacteria that immunologically it can come back and forth and cause all kinds of interesting problems. One of the more complicated immunologic infections that we know about in general. But I think that the take home is that animals can give you stuff, and it's kind of helpful to know about some of those things.
Yeah.
if you're in a rural area around those kinds of animals.
This is such a random great story.
I have friends who live in Oklahoma, and they're not necessarily like rurally they're living in populated places of Oklahoma. And I've been on the phone with them like, hold on, there's an armadillo in the middle of the road. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people don't know this.
Don't touch armadillos.
Right.
Do not touch
It's
them.
all well and good till you get your Good Samaritan leprosy case by going and picking up the
Right.
armadillo and taking it off the
Yeah.
road to save them. So yeah, just best not to handle them at all, it turns
I
out.
mean, I'm
Ugh,
thinking steel
wow.
magnolias, the armadillo cake. I'm thinking a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, Louisiana, some parts of South Mississippi, and in Texas are kind of the areas that you usually see this. But once again, it may push a little north. It
4 to 5 years, you wouldn't even know. So if
That's
this might have-
crazy.
takes a long time. I feel like rabies. If you get another thing is I was
Right.
around friends that had a bat that they found in their hotel room.
What?
Oh, no.
And they had to take rabies prophylaxis because, you don't know. It may be 6 months before you come down with rabies. And
The
I've seen a
bat, but I
rabies
feel like
case.
people know about bats. Like that woman who the bat particle flew in her mouth, and then she got she had to get all the rabies. But then she didn't have her
Exactly.
insurance. That was just in the news. Like a bat flew in her mouth or something crazy. But
What
bats,
people
I've-
may not
so
know, though,
bats like
is
in-
that even if you wake up and there's a bat flying in your room, you probably need rabies prophylaxis because you
What?
don't know whether it's bitten you. You may not find it. It may not bleed. They're very tiny. That's one thing that sometimes people do forget about. I even heard one of my nurse practitioners, one of her relatives encountered a man who was attacked by a vicious otter in Washington State, and clearly was a rabid animal that they subsequently dispensed with. But so other animals can get rabies.
Wow.
PSAs for everybody. If you've touched an armadillo in the last 4 to 5 years, you're still not in the clear.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna need
And go get your fly swatters so that you don't get the screwworm.
yeah the
And
screwworm.
you can't test for leprosy if you've touched the armadillo. You're kind of stuck,
Wait,
waiting.
so you
And
can't you just
thankfully-
wait to see if you get leprosy. I'm so sorry if you're listening and you touched an armadillo 2 years ago. But listen,
Kind of ruined your afternoon, haven't we? Yeah.
I really ruined your afternoon. But if you have not touched an armadillo and you've been thinking about it, please don't. And the bat thing is fascinating. I mean, I definitely knew. I think we all know the bats carry thing, but I didn't know if you wake up and see a bat, you should just treat it like rabies. Did you know that, ladies? That do that?
No.
You didn't know.
No.
I did not know that. And
That's why I
and
love talking to Dr. Steve.
he's the best.
But if you've been in an enclosed room where a bat's flying around and
Or how
you're
about
like,
a
"Whoa,"
cave? People go cave spelunking and they see bats, and there's caves.
a little different there, but right. I mean, I don't, you're going to occasionally encounter them in caves, but certainly in an enclosed place like that, because that's unusual. And the bat that I was talking
Oh.
about was fairly docile, wouldn't try to escape or anything. So that's kind of a rabid behavior. And you can test the animals for rabies, the bat
Mhm.
included. You can send it
Right,
to the health department, they can test the brain and see.
So you wake up with a little vampire in your room.
It's just dangerous out there,
You tested the dog for rabies?
Oh, when I worked at the vet and undergrad.
Oh, that makes
we,
sense.
Yeah, we had a rabid dog that came in. And so I had to help with getting its brain ready to be sent in.
Well, and the thing about dogs is, if they are rabid and biting you and transmitting rabies, they're about to die. They're not gonna live
I remember that.
Oh.
That's the
Yeah,
sad part.
that you can close them and observe them for a period of days, and if they don't die, then you're okay. And so, so there are ways to do that because they don't survive rabies
Right.
when they're like that.
And I think too, to go back to more PSAs here, we should worry about armadillos and bats if you're in an enclosed room, but valley fever, don't be as scared of it because you saw one article or multiple articles, right?
Yeah, if you're living in the San Joaquin Valley, you've been around it all your life.
Yeah, you've been around it all your life, possibly. It's nothing to freak out about. Oysters have always been problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe think twice before you get in the ocean with a cut.
And if you have
Am I
bad liver
missing
disease,
anything?
you're not probably the person that should do raw oysters if you have bad liver disease or
Right.
swim in the
Mhm.
and that
Right.
particularly, my oyster-loving people will get very angry at me if I say you shouldn't eat raw oysters.
Right.
Not saying that, but some people should probably think twice about it.
And know where you're sourcing them from.
Exactly.
And also, I guess like what Jennie was saying, if you're seeing more warnings prevalent, temperatures have heated up, things like that. These are all signs that
Pay attention.
bacteria, pay attention. Bacteria
Absolutely,
is a
and
bloom.
don't get raw oysters at an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's kind of a rule. of thumb.
Exactly.
Oh.
If it's 104 outside, as always, Dr. Steve, I did not know that part of the armadillo. I knew it was going to be a story about an armadillo. I had no idea.
That was amazing.
That was
Thanks, Dr.
amazing.
Steve.
Yes.
4 to 5 years later, oh my gosh, the stuff that
Well, thankfully, it's a very treatable illness,
Yes.
and people can do fine.
yes,
But
leprosy is
yeah,
treatable.
it's complicated though.
Be as complicated, and you won't know for 4 to 5 years.
So, Dr. Steve, talking about leprosy, is there actually a way to treat it?
Yeah, it's very treatable, and there are better regimens for treating it now. It's a combination of antibiotics, and it can be given even monthly, once a
Okay.
month antibiotics, but it takes a year or two to treat it, depending on the
Wow.
form it takes, depending on how long you've had it. There are a lot of different complicating issues about it, but you generally fall into somebody that takes therapy for a year or 2 years, and it can be as simple as just monthly pills.
Because we think of body parts falling off.
Right. We do. We think of people
Absolutely.
like wrapped up and like
Yeah.
their hand falls off or something from the
Yes.
Yeah, and of
movies.
course, the biblical form that's referred to leprosy is probably not Hansen's disease, which is what we call leprosy now. But yeah, it causes nerve damage. And when it does that,
okay.
you get numb. And so you have traumatic damage to your distal fingers, maybe to your nose and other places. And that's where that damage comes from. You just can't feel it when your hands and toes and maybe even the tip of your nose are traumatized. And so that's where you get those kind of necrotic changes and can get kind of partial, gradual amputation of distal digits and the like if it's not
That
treated
makes
and taken
sense.
care of.
Totally makes sense. Well, at least it's treatable.
Yes.
Absolutely
There's
treatable, yeah.
always a sunshine at the end of the tunnel. Well, you've calmed our anxiety and fears. We hope listeners as well. But we know you have to go do your real job now.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was
Thank
amazing.
you.
Good to see you guys always.
All right.
Take care.
Awesome.
Good to see you.
Follow Oh Gross wherever you get your podcast to catch every gross but useful episode.
And also find out what you cannot and can catch.
Yes.
Be sure to follow us on socials at It's Oh Gross.
Typhus, oysters, valley fever. Get the facts, not the
Ooh.
panics. You can play the episode and see takeaways at, oh, wow, the best website in the world, ogross.com.
Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend, taboos. Icky's what we do. Psoriasis, podiatrist, and pinworms too. It's so gross. No need for strife, because gross. Lice is part of life, it's just science. Yeah, it's not so weird. We got the facts, nothing to fear. Oh, gross. It's just science, no, it's not weird. It's just science, nothing to fear. It's just science, so wipe those tears. It's boogers and rash and that sticky scratch. Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend, taboo. Icky's what we do. Psoriasis, podiatrist, and pinworms too.